The Chosen Season 6 was supposed to film in the very place where Jesus walked. But now, with tensions exploding across the Middle East and the threat of World War III hanging over Israel, everything has changed. Dallas Jenkins and his team are facing an impossible choice. And what I'm about to tell you might completely shift how you understand what's coming next for the show. This isn't just about filming locations. It's about safety, sacrifice, and whether the most important season of The Chosen will ever make it to our screens the way it was originally envisioned. Let me just say this upfront. Season 6 of The Chosen is not cancelled, but the situation is way more complicated than most people realize, and honestly, when I started digging into this, I felt this pit in my stomach because the stakes are higher than ever before. So let's talk about what's really going on and why Israel, the one place that should be perfect for filming the final days of Jesus, has become nearly impossible to access. First, you need to understand something. Dallas Jenkins has always been intentional about where they film. This isn't just about finding pretty locations or saving money. It's about authenticity. It's about walking where Jesus walked, feeling what he felt, and bringing that same weight to the screen. That's why they filmed the Crucifixion scenes in Matera, Italy, the same place Mel Gibson used for the Passion of the Christ. That's why they've gone to such great lengths to make every frame feel real and lived in. And for Season 6, which focuses on the final day before the crucifixion, the original plan was to film significant portions in Israel itself. Can you imagine? The Garden of Gethsemane, the path to Golgotha, the very streets where Jesus was mocked and beaten. That's not just symbolic. That's sacred ground. But then the geopolitical situation in the Middle East started spiraling out of control. I'm talking about escalating conflicts, threats of all-out war, and a level of instability that makes it genuinely dangerous for large film crews to operate in the region. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this has thrown a massive wrench into the production. Because here's the thing, insurance companies won't cover film productions in active conflict zones. Airlines are canceling flights. Governments are issuing travel warnings. And even if Dallas wanted to take the risk, he'd be putting hundreds of cast and crew members in harm's way. That's not a decision anyone takes lightly, especially when you're trying to tell the story of Jesus with the respect and reverence it deserves. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Why not just wait? Why not pause production until things calm down? And honestly, that would make sense under normal circumstances. But Season 6 isn't a normal production. They've already been filming for 86 days across multiple locations. The cast has poured their hearts and souls into this. Jonathan Roumie has said this is the most difficult work of his entire career. Elizabeth Tabish talked about how heartbreaking it is to watch someone you love be tortured and crucified, even in a scripted setting. Abe Bueno Jalad described seeing things on set that gave him goosebumps. Moments so powerful he couldn't stay away even on his days off. This isn't just a job for these people. It's a calling. And the idea of stopping now when they're so close to finishing feels almost unbearable. So what does Dallas do? He adapts, and let me tell you, the way he and his team have handled this crisis is nothing short of remarkable. Instead of giving up on the authenticity they've always fought for, they've doubled down on finding solutions. They've scouted alternative locations that can still capture the spirit and look of ancient Jerusalem without putting anyone in danger. They've leaned even harder into their partnership with locations like Matera, which already has that ancient, time-worn beauty. And they've made sure that every single frame, every single moment, still carries the weight and reverence that this story demands. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about where you film. It's about how you film it. It's about the intention behind it. And Dallas has made it clear that nothing, not war, not logistics, not budget constraints, is going to stop them from finishing this season the right way. But I'd be lying if I said this hasn't affected the production. It has, big time. The original vision for Season 6 included filming in locations that would have made every scene feel even more authentic. And now that's off the table, at least for the foreseeable future. That's a loss, not just for the filmmakers, but for all of us who've been waiting to see Jesus' final hours brought to life in the most powerful way possible. And if you've been following The Chosen as long as I have, you know how much these details matter. This isn't a show that cuts corners. This is a show that goes all in every single time. So yeah, this hurts a little. If you're as invested in this journey as I am, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me how you feel about all this, and subscribe because trust me, you're going to want to stay updated on everything that's coming. This story is far from over, and what happens next might surprise you. Dallas Jenkins has been incredibly transparent about this, which I really respect. He's not sugarcoating it or pretending everything's fine. In interviews and updates to fans, He's acknowledged that the geopolitical situation has forced them to completely rethink their approach to season 6, and here's what really gets me. This isn't just about logistics or convenience. It's about the safety of real human beings. We're talking about actors, crew members, production staff, people with families and lives and dreams. Jonathan Roumie, Elizabeth Tabish, Abe Bueno Jalad. All these people we've come to know and love over 5 seasons. They'd be the ones at risk if production pushed forward in Israel. And I don't care how important a TV show is, no story is worth putting people's lives in danger. Not even this one, but here's where it gets really complicated. And this is what keeps me up at night thinking about it. The Chosen has always been more than just a show. It's a movement. It's reached hundreds of millions of people around the world. It's changed lives, brought people back to faith, helped people see Jesus in a completely new way. And season 6 is arguably the most important season of all because it's showing us the crucifixion. The moment that changed human history forever. The stakes couldn't be higher, both creatively and spiritually. So when Dallas and his team are faced with this impossible situation, they're not just thinking about filming schedules and budgets. They're thinking about the weight of responsibility they're carrying. They're thinking about all of us who've been waiting for the season, praying for the season, investing in this season. And they're trying to figure out how to deliver something worthy of that trust, while also keeping everyone safe. I mean, can you imagine being in Dallas's shoes right now? You've spent years building toward this moment. You've got a cast that's completely dialed in, emotionally and spiritually ready to give the performances of their lives. You've got millions of fans around the world who are counting on you. And then the world itself starts falling apart in the one region where you need to film. What do? How do you make that call? And honestly, I think the fact that Dallas has chosen to prioritize safety over spectacle says everything about his character and his priorities. He could have pushed forward, taken the risk, and hoped for the best. But he didn't. He made the harder choice, the right choice, even though it meant compromising on some of the original vision. Now, here's something I want you to really think about. The fact that they can't film in Israel doesn't mean the season is ruined. It doesn't mean we're getting some watered-down version of the story. What it means is that Dallas and his team have had to get even more creative, even more intentional about how they're bringing these moments to life. And if there's one thing The Chosen has proven over and over again, it's that this team knows how to work miracles with whatever resources they have. Remember, this is a show that started with a crowdfunded pilot that no one thought would succeed. This is a show that's broken every rule in Hollywood and come out stronger because of it. So yeah, not being able to film in Israel is a setback. But it's not the end of the world. It's just another challenge for a team that's built its entire identity on overcoming challenges. And let me tell you something else that really struck me when I was researching this. The conflict in the Middle East isn't just affecting The Chosen. It's affecting countless other productions, pilgrimages, humanitarian efforts, everything. This is a global crisis that's touching every aspect of life in that region. And while it's easy for us to sit here and think about how it impacts our favorite TV show, we have to remember that there are real people over there living through this every single day. Families torn apart, homes destroyed, lives lost. So yeah, I'm disappointed that season 6 couldn't be filmed where it was supposed to be. But I'm also grateful that the cast and crew are safe. I'm grateful that Dallas made the call to protect his people. And I'm hopeful that one day, when peace finally comes to that region, maybe The Chosen will get another chance to film there. Maybe season 7 or a future project will be able to walk those sacred streets and capture that authenticity in ways we can't even imagine right now. Dallas and the Come and See Foundation have been incredibly upfront about the fundraising goals for season 6. And right now they've raised nearly $16 million of that $30 million target. That's amazing, don't get me wrong. The fact that fans have contributed that much money to help tell this story is a testament to how much The Chosen means to people. But it also means they're still about $14 million short. And every unexpected cost that comes from not being able to film in Israel just makes that gap harder to close. And I know some people might be thinking, well, if they can't afford it, maybe they should scale back or wait. But here's the reality, you can't scale back the crucifixion. You can't tell that story halfway. It demands everything you've got, every dollar, every ounce of creativity, every bit of heart and soul, and Dallas has made it clear that he's not willing to compromise on that no matter what obstacles get thrown in his way. What really gets me, though, is thinking about all the planning that went into the original Israel shoot. I mean, they would have spent months, maybe even years, preparing for that. Location scouts would have visited sites, done test shoots, worked with local authorities to secure permissions. Production designers would have mapped out how to use those real locations to tell the story. The entire season would have been built around the idea of filming in the actual places where Jesus walked, and then, almost overnight, all of that planning becomes worthless. You can't use it, you have to start from scratch, and the emotional toll of that, not just the financial toll, has to be absolutely crushing for everyone involved. Because these aren't just random crew members punching a clock, these are people who've dedicated years of their lives to this project. People who believe in what they're doing, people who've sacrificed time with their families, turned down other jobs and poured their hearts into making The Chosen the best it can possibly be. And let's talk about the cast for a second, because I cannot even imagine what they must be going through. Jonathan Roumie has already said that Season 6 is the most difficult work of his career. He's lost weight and muscle from the physical demands of portraying the crucifixion. He's gone to emotional and spiritual places he's never been before. And he did all of that knowing that the original plan was to film in Israel, in places that would have added an extra layer of authenticity and meaning to his performance. Now he's having to deliver that same level of intensity and vulnerability in different locations, without that connection to the physical places where Jesus actually suffered. And I'm not saying he can't do it, I know he can. I've watched him grow into this role over 5 seasons and I trust him completely. But it's got to be heartbreaking to know that the original vision, the one they'd all been preparing for, is no longer possible. Elizabeth Tabish has talked about how devastating it is to watch someone you love be tortured and crucified, even in a scripted setting, and as Mary Magdalene, she's going to be right there at the foot of the cross, witnessing every moment of Jesus' suffering. That's not acting, that's living through trauma, even if it's scripted trauma. And I think about her preparing for those scenes, knowing she was supposed to be filming them in the actual region where Mary Magdalene stood 2,000 years ago. There's something sacred about that connection, something that can't quite be replicated anywhere else, and now that's been taken away. Not because anyone made a mistake or didn't plan well enough, but because the world is literally falling apart in that part of the globe. How do you process that as an actor? How do you find the emotional truth of the scene when the context has been completely upended? Abe Bueno Jalad said something that really stuck with me. He talked about how he's come back to set on days he doesn't even work just to watch what's happening because he's seen stuff that gives him goosebumps. He said there's been incredible stuff happening on set that he can't even describe. And I believe him because The Chosen has always had this quality to it. This sense that something bigger is happening than just making a TV show, but I also wonder how much of that energy, that spiritual electricity, has been affected by the stress and disappointment of not being able to film in Israel. Because whether we want to admit it or not, location matters, context matters. And when you're trying to capture the most important moment in human history, every detail matters. Every choice matters, and having to make those choices under the pressure of a geopolitical crisis with the clock ticking and the money running out. That's a weight I can't even comprehend. But here's what gives me hope, and I really mean this. The Chosen has never been about perfect circumstances. It's always been about making something beautiful out of limitation. It's about faith and action. It's about believing that God can work through whatever situation you're in, even when it's not what you planned or hoped for. And if there's any team that can take this setback and turn it into something meaningful, it's Dallas Jenkins and his crew. They've done it before, they'll do it again, and honestly, I think there's something almost poetic about the fact that they're having to adapt and overcome in order to tell the story of Jesus, who himself adapted and overcame every obstacle thrown at him. Maybe this is all part of the plan, maybe this is exactly how it's supposed to happen, I don't know. But I'm choosing to trust it, and here's where I have to give Dallas and his team so much credit. Because they've been thinking about this from the very beginning. They know that filming in Israel would have been incredible, but they also know that the power of The Chosen has never been about spectacular locations or big budget set pieces. It's always been about the intimate moments, the human connections, the way they make you see familiar stories through completely new eyes. Think about some of the most powerful scenes from previous seasons: Jesus calling Matthew, Mary Magdalene being freed from her demons, Peter denying Jesus 3 times. None of those scenes needed to be filmed in Israel to wreck us emotionally. They worked because the writing was sharp, the acting was raw, and the spiritual truth behind them was front and center. And I have to believe that the same principles apply to Season 6. Even with all the obstacles they've faced, what really matters in the trial of Jesus isn't whether they filmed it in the actual courtyard, where Caiaphas questioned him. What matters is whether we feel the injustice of it, the cruelty, the weight of watching an innocent man be condemned. What matters is whether Jonathan Roumie can capture that moment when Jesus looks Caiaphas in the eye and says, "From now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." That moment, that claim to divinity that seals his fate, that's what we need to feel in our bones. And I don't need to be in Jerusalem to feel that. I need Jonathan to deliver that line with the authority and sorrow and love that Jesus must have felt in that moment. I need the camera to capture the shock on Caiaphas's face, the tearing of his robes, the chaos that erupts in the room. That's what's going to make the scene work, not the location. Same thing with Pilate. The whole tragedy of Pilate is that he knows Jesus is innocent but doesn't have the courage to do the right thing. He tries to pass the responsibility to Herod. He offers to release Barabbas. He literally washes his hands in front of the crowd, saying he's innocent of this man's blood. But at the end of the day, he gives the order. He condemns Jesus to die. And that moral cowardice, that failure of leadership, that's a universal human experience. We've all been in situations where we knew the right thing to do but didn't do it because it was too hard or too costly. And if the chosen can make us see ourselves in Pilate, if they can make us squirm with recognition at his weakness, then they've done their job. It doesn't matter if they filmed it in a reconstructed Roman fortress in Italy instead of in Israel. What matters is the truth of the moment, and let's talk about the crucifixion itself, because that's obviously the climax of the entire season. Dallas has said they're spending $30 million on the finale, and a huge chunk of that is going toward making sure the crucifixion is portrayed with the reverence, the brutality, and the spiritual weight it deserves. They filmed those scenes in Matera, Italy, the same location where Mel Gibson shot The Passion of the Christ. And if you've ever seen The Passion, you know that Matera has this ancient, weathered beauty that makes it feel timeless. It doesn't look like a movie set. It looks like a place where something terrible and sacred could happen, and that's exactly what the chosen needs. They need a location that can hold the weight of what they're trying to show us. And from everything I've heard, Matera delivers that in spades. But beyond the location, what's going to make the crucifixion scene work is the performances. It's Jonathan Roumie hanging on that cross, embodying the physical agony and the spiritual surrender of Jesus in his final moments. It's Elizabeth Tabish as Mary Magdalene, watching the man who saved her life die in the most horrific way imaginable. It's the other disciples scattered and terrified, realizing too late what they've lost. It's the Roman soldiers going through the motions of another execution, not understanding that they're killing the Son of God. All of those layers, all of those perspectives, that's what's going to destroy us emotionally. So where does all of this leave us? Honestly, I think we're standing at a crossroads, not just for the chosen, but for how we think about faith and storytelling in a world that feels like it's tearing itself apart. Because here's the brutal truth. The reason they can't film in Israel isn't going away anytime soon. The Middle East is more unstable now than it's been in decades. The threat of wider conflict, the kind of conflict that could pull in multiple nations and reshape the entire region. That's not fear-mongering. That's reality. And it breaks my heart because Israel is supposed to be the Holy Land. It's supposed to be the place where people go to connect with their faith, to walk where Jesus walked, to see the places where history and divinity intersected in the most profound way imaginable. But right now, it's a war zone. And that tragedy, that deep, aching tragedy, is something we can't ignore even as we talk about a TV show. And I think that's actually part of what makes Season 6 so important right now. We're living in dark times. I don't think anyone would argue with that. There's conflict and division everywhere you look. People are scared. People are angry. People are losing hope. And into that darkness, The Chosen is bringing us the story of the darkest day in human history. The day when the Son of God was tortured and executed, when it looked like evil had won. When the disciples scattered and hid because they thought everything they believed in was a lie. But we know how the story ends. We know that 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead. We know that the darkness didn't win. We know that love triumphed over hate, life triumphed over death, and hope triumphed over despair. And maybe that's exactly the message we need right now. Maybe that's exactly why Season 6 is coming to us at this moment. Even if it couldn't be filmed the way it was originally planned. Dallas Jenkins said something that really stuck with me. He said that any dollar we sacrifice to help finish this season is going to be part of changing someone's life. And I believe that. I've seen it happen. I've heard stories from people all over the world who've had their faith rekindled or discovered for the first time because of The Chosen. People who were far from God and found their way back. People who thought they knew the story of Jesus but discovered they didn't really know him at all. People who were struggling with depression, addiction, hopelessness, and found light in the darkness through this show. That's not just marketing talk. That's real. That's lives being transformed. And Season 6, with its focus on the crucifixion, has the potential to reach even more people, to touch even more hearts, to remind us all why this story matters so much. But they can't finish it without us. Right now, they're still about $14 million short of their $30 million goal. And every dollar matters. Every contribution, whether it's $5 or $500, helps them get one step closer to bringing the season to completion. And I know times are tough for a lot of people. I know not everyone can afford to give. But if you can, if you have anything to spare, this is your chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. This is your chance to help tell the greatest story ever told in a way that could change someone's life. Maybe that someone is a family member. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a stranger on the other side of the world who's going to watch season 6 and finally understand what Jesus did for them. You don't know, but your contribution could be the thing that makes it possible. And even if you can't give financially, there are other ways to support the show. You can share it with people who need to see it. You can talk about it on social media. You can pray for the cast and crew as they push through these final months of production. You can create buzz and anticipation so that when season 6 finally releases, it reaches as many people as possible. Because that's what this is all about. It's not about making a successful TV show. It's about spreading the message of Jesus to a world that desperately needs it. It's about reminding people that even in the darkest moments, there's hope. Even when everything looks lost, God is still working. Even when we can't see the path forward, we can trust that He's leading us somewhere good. I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started researching this video, I was worried. I was worried that the conflict in the Middle East had derailed something precious. I was worried that season 6 wouldn't be able to live up to the impossible expectations we've all placed on it. I was worried that the magic, the heart, the spirit of the chosen might have been lost somewhere in the chaos of war and logistics and compromised plans. But the more I dug into it, the more I learned about how Dallas and his team have responded to these challenges, the more hopeful I became. Because they haven't given up. They haven't compromised on what matters. They've adapted, they've fought, they've sacrificed, and they've kept their eyes on the prize. And that prize is telling the story of Jesus in a way that honors Him, honors the truth of Scripture, and honors all of us who've been on this journey with them. So no, season 6 isn't canceled. But it needs us now more than ever. It needs our support, our prayers, our voices, and yes, our financial contributions if we're able to give them. This is the final stretch. This is the moment where we all have to decide whether we're just passive viewers or whether we're active participants in something that could genuinely change the world. And I don't know about you, but I'm all in. I've been all in since season 1, and I'm not stopping now. If this video moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you why The Chosen matters so much, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me how you're feeling about all of this. Tell me what you're most excited to see in season 6. Tell me how The Chosen has impacted your life. And subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep covering every update, every behind-the-scenes detail, every piece of news about season 6 and beyond. This story is far from over. The crucifixion is coming. The resurrection is coming. And we're going to be here for all of it together. Because that's what The Chosen has always been about. Not just watching a show, but being part of a community, a movement, a family of people who believe that this story still matters, that it can still change lives, and that it's worth fighting for no matter what obstacles stand in the way.